Hey guys, it's Frozenballz here, and today we're going to be talking about Banshee. Banshee is an amazing frame. She is pretty nimble, but the amount of damage that she can bring to the table is fantastic. As I'm sure everyone is aware, sonar is one of her best skills, but that's not to say the rest of the skills are not good either. You can use sonar together with silence to increase both your damage output as well as crowd control enemies in a pinch. Should you ever get stuck, you can always use Soundquake to just quickly stun lock enemies, and if you go with a power strength build, you can actually kill all the enemies as well with it, within reason. If you build for the augment, Sonic Fracture is a very good augment for removing armor from enemies, so this works perfectly against Grenier and corrupted enemies itself to remove armor. This is ideal for solo play or even in groups where you don't have corrosive projection, and especially if you're doing high level stuff where enemies have a lot of armor and you don't have corrosive projection in the squad itself. I have two main builds which I use for my Banshee. One is a general build built around the sonar augment called Resonance, and the second one is a maximum range build for Soundquake for crowd control. As I'm sure as everyone is aware, Resonance basically procs by shooting the sonar spots applied on enemies, which then spreads to other enemies, and then you can keep a resonance chain going, which means you can constantly be doing high amounts of damage, and resonance obviously stacks on other enemies as well on top of that, so you can keep hitting enemies, and at some point, if you hit enough crit spots, you can have enemies completely covered in sonar spots. The reason why sonar is so good is because the crit multiplier which sonar crit spots add to enemies means you can do anywhere between 100k damage, 200k damage to 2 billion, 3 billion damage per shot. In a game with absurd amount of scaling that Warframe has, this is fantastic. This basically means you can kill a bunch of enemies really quickly. So using something like a Bratton Vandal or a bow, you can dish out a lot of damage to high level enemies without ever worrying about them becoming too tanky or too bullet spongy. Now this build originally used to use a combination of Transient Fortitude and Blind Rage, but I find that being able to spam sonar more often, more beneficial as opposed to spamming sonar once every few seconds for a higher crit multiplier itself. This is again a general build which uses sonar plus silence at the same time, and this build performs very well even in sorties. At this point, despite DE not mentioning it, we can safely assume that DE balances stuff for enemies level 0 to 100, 120 if you consider sorties scaling as well. So within that balance, this build performs very well as well. Fleeting Expertise adds some power efficiency, Overextended adds more range, Prime Continuity and Constitution add more duration, same with Narrow-Minded. Overextended here is a rank 4-1 to counteract the Narrow-Minded, but to still give you enough of range and duration. It's basically all about balance in terms of the skills or in terms of the builds itself. Cunning Drift adds more range as well, and then of course with this build I ended up using Mobilize so I can get across terrain real quick. Using a dash polarity means you can use corrosive projection, enemy radar, or any other dash one like energy siphon as well, so that's up to your own discretion. The second build that I use for my Banshee is a pure CC build which revolves around maximum efficiency and maximum range for Soundquake. What this means is with 3 energy drain per second, I can basically go with Prime Flow, maximum energy, and pop Xenuric, get my energy topped up, and just use Soundquake to stun lock enemies in a massive circle. I think the range currently is about 50 meters, which is big enough to crowd control everything on most small to medium sized maps, and even on big maps it performs pretty well as well. So in a situation like if you were doing a defense or a mobile defense, you can just stun lock and just hold down entire choke points as well really well. So within that kind of setting, this build works really well. Having said that, my primary build still is the first one with the resonance one. There is the argument that you could technically stack more power strength for even higher crit multiplier spots using sonar / resonance. Now, if you were going for a build specifically for that, sure, you can make full use of it, you can make it fit perfectly, and you can make it fit into whichever scenario you choose. It is not exactly power efficient, so you will not be spamming sonar as often, which means if you are killing enemies faster than you can pop sonar with it while keeping up with your energy efficiency, you might not be able to cover all the enemies with it, so you might want to bear in mind the risk / reward of such a build. In a build like that, it's all about having a balance between maximum power strength, some duration and efficiency, and range. That's more or less the builds. Let me show you the builds in action now, just to show you the proof of concept itself. Thank you very much for watching, guys. Always appreciated. If you like what you saw, leave a like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one.